Smell the aroma of the afterlife with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Throughout this course, the Gospel of John has invited us to listen to the wind with Nicodemus, to savor the water with the Samaritan woman, Fotini, and to move from merely looking to a deeper seeing with the man born blind, Celadonius. In chapters 11 and 12, we read references to our sense of smell, olfaction, which is perhaps the most underrated and underappreciated of the five senses. Helen Keller writes, "For some inexplicable reason, the sense of smell does not hold the high position it deserves among its sisters. There is something of the fallen angel about it." She says, "In my experience, smell is most important. It is recorded that the Lord commanded that incense be burnt before him continually with a sweet savor." And she says, I doubt if there is any sensation arising from sight more delightful than the odors which filter through sun-warmed, wind-tossed branches, or the tide of scents which swells, subsides, rises again, wave on wave, filling the wide world with invisible sweetness. She says, "Smell is a potent wizard that transports us across 1,000 miles and all the years we have lived." Smell is also a sense directly connected to our memories and emotions. Helen Keller writes about this as well. In John chapter 11, we read about very intense emotions of Martha and Mary, and especially Jesus. And we read about Martha discouraging the opening of Lazarus's tomb due to the stench of death and decay. And we learn that Mary of Bethany is the same woman who anointed Jesus with perfume by taking a pint of pure nard and pouring it on Jesus' feet, and then wiping his feet with her hair. So we see the beginning of chapter 11 and towards the end, these references to smell. Mary is introduced as the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. And then Martha says, "Lord, there is already a stench because he has been dead for 4 days." We have this aroma and a stench. Now, the problem with the description of Mary of Bethany in verse 2 is that this anointing of Jesus has not happened yet in the narrative. It doesn't happen until the next chapter, chapter 12, verse 3. And that verse elaborates on the smell. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. This is such a sensual description. And then the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. A sensual description that then highlights the sense of smell. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Now, commentators are confused and try to explain this out-of-order aberration in the text by arguing that the editor or the redactor of John made a mistake in the final draft by placing the raising of Lazarus before the anointing of Jesus when it really should be the other way around. And this leads scholars like the great Rudolf Bultmann to rearrange chapters and verses, and sometimes even words, to supposedly make more sense. And then each scholar ends up having their own rearranged version of the gospel, which becomes a bit of a mess, in my opinion. So I wonder if there might be a more subtle teaching for us if we read the text as it is, as it's been read for centuries, with this apparent out-of-order aberration. I wonder if there might be a subtle teaching for us about death and new life and the power of aroma. When we listen, taste, see, and touch, the electrical impulses are routed through a part of our brain called the thalamus, which then sends them to the appropriate processing centers in our body. But smell bypasses that process because odors go straight through what is called the olfactory bulb, which connects directly to the amygdala and the hippocampus, the parts of the brain that process memory and emotion, as well as dreams and visions. Our sense of smell connects directly to the parts of our brain that can offer us glimpses of the spiritual life beyond this earthly life. That's why they say the nose knows. Our sense of smell connects directly to the parts of our brain that can offer us glimpses of the spiritual life beyond this earthly life. Back in 1988, a woman named Elizabeth Crone went to synagogue to observe her grandfather's yahrzeit, the anniversary of his death. And as she was walking across the parking lot in the rain with an umbrella, she was struck by lightning. She saw her body lying on the wet, dirty ground with her brand new shoes destroyed by the blast and the bottom of her feet burnt. When she realized that she was dead, she saw the warm glow of an otherworldly light that brought her into the most beautiful garden. She writes about this in her book, Changed in a Flash. And she says, I was dead, but I was more alive than when I had been that 28-year-old woman with the umbrella in the synagogue parking lot a few seconds earlier. I was surrounded by and suffused with an unutterable feeling of unconditional love. The love was all-encompassing and embraced me in every way. And then she talks about the palpable scents that hung in the air around her like ornaments. Now her physical body is lying down on the wet, muddy parking lot of the synagogue. But she's in this spiritual body, and she's still able to smell these palpable scents that hung in the air around her like ornaments, in the soothing sound of a gently babbling brook nearby, so she can hear. And she can hear the cadence of the gorgeous otherworldly music surrounding her, in the visual floral feast before her, and in the deeply comforting knowledge that I was safe, protected, and unconditionally loved by God Himself. In the garden, Elizabeth was given the choice to move deeper into the afterlife or to return to her earthly body. Since she didn't want her two young boys to grow up without a mother, she chose to return to this life. Before her near-death experience, Elizabeth was a Jewish agnostic who believed that death was the end. But during her time in the garden, she learned what many others have learned from their near-death experiences, their NDEs. For her, there were three main takeaways. First, everyone is loved intensely. Second, no one need fear death. And third, there is tremendous comfort in knowing there is more. She elaborates on this first takeaway. She says, everyone is loved intensely. To feel the unspeakable love I felt in the garden is breathtaking. It is also comforting, energizing, empowering, and healing. We've all been hurt by life at some point, but to know that we are loved without question or end goes beyond any medication or therapy known to humankind. To feel that love when your soul separates from your body makes you know you are truly home. Also, a neurosurgeon, who happens to also be an Episcopalian, named Eben Alexander, had a near-death experience, and he similarly summed up what he learned in three parts. First, you are loved and cherished. Second, you have nothing to fear. Third, there is nothing you can do wrong. Along with these messages of a profound belovedness that drives out fear, perfect love drives out fear, people with NDEs also learned that time is not linear. The past, present, and future are all happening now, in the eternal present. Elizabeth Crone used the metaphor of a layer cake. We can move up the cake to the future and move down to the past, but it's all happening now. And it is this revelation that leads me back to the power of smell, the sense that connects directly to the part of our brain that can offer us glimpses of the afterlife. It is while referring to smell that the author of John's Gospel reveals a non-linear understanding of time, which makes me wonder if the author himself had undergone a kind of near-death experience. Did the beloved disciple undergo an experience of the afterlife? Scholars agree that the beloved disciple is the author of John. There is internal textual evidence of that, evidence in the text itself. But of course, there is dispute when it comes to the identity of the beloved disciple. Here, I'm suggesting that perhaps the beloved disciple had an experience of the afterlife. So therefore, the beloved disciple may have been Lazarus, who in chapter 11 is referred to twice as beloved, loved by Jesus. Lord, the one you love is ill. When Jesus weeps, see how he loved him. Perhaps Lazarus smelled certain aromas that would bring back memories of his experience of the afterlife, like those palpable scents that hung like ornaments for Elizabeth Crone. Perhaps Lazarus smelled certain aromas that would bring back memories of his experience of the afterlife, of the non-linear nature of time, and of the truths he learned in the afterlife, which are expressed so beautifully and emphatically in the Gospel of John, in the Gospel that perhaps he wrote. In my opinion, these truths pass the smell test, and it is these truths that the Gospel invites us to hear and taste and see and touch right now in this eternally present moment. And it's the Gospel of John that perhaps expresses these truths more poetically, powerfully, effectively than any other text in human history. You are loved and cherished intensely. You need not fear death. There is tremendous comfort in knowing there is so much more. We see these expressed in the Gospel of John as well as in the larger Johannine corpus, right? 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. God is love. Perfect love drives out fear. You are loved and cherished intensely. You need not fear death. There is tremendous comfort in knowing there is so much more.